not the kind you plan weeks ahead for. No decorations, no candles, no cake. Just one of those evenings where everyone shows up out of habit, not excitement. Folding chairs pulled out. Plates stacked too high with food no one really wanted but everyone pretended to love. The living room was loud, voices overlapping, fake laughter bouncing off the walls, conversations about work, money, promotions, and who's doing better now. The usual unspoken competition that always seemed to hover in the air whenever my family got together. I was sitting on the edge of the couch, half listening, half scrolling on my phone, when I noticed someone approaching me. It was my relative. They weren't the loud type, never the center of attention, the kind of person who listened more than they spoke. They stood there quietly for a moment, holding a small gift bag, the kind you'd get for free at a discount store. At first, I thought they were just passing by. Then they stopped in front of me. "This is for you," they said, extending the bag with a small smile. I froze for a second. I honestly didn't expect anything. There was no reason for a gift, no occasion, no announcement, so instinct kicked in. I smiled politely, stood up slightly, and said, "Oh, you didn't have to." People nearby turned their heads. Gifts attract attention, especially in families like mine. I reached inside the bag, and that's when my smile stiffened. It was a keychain. Not a fancy one, not engraved with my name, not leather or custom made, just a cheap-looking, lightweight keychain with dull metal and a small ring. The kind you see hanging near the cashier at random convenience stores. The kind that costs $2, maybe less. For a split second, I thought maybe there was something else in the bag. There was. The room reacted before I could. Someone let out a short laugh. Another person leaned forward to get a better look. Someone else whispered, not quietly enough, "That's it." A few heads turned. A few smiles curled into smirks. My face burned. I felt that familiar pressure, the kind you feel when all eyes are on you, waiting for a reaction. Waiting to see if you'll look ungrateful. Waiting to see if you'll embarrass yourself. So I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because silence would have been worse. "Oh wow," I said, holding it up, forcing enthusiasm into my voice. "A keychain, nice." I thanked them, loudly, politely, repeated it even. But inside, my thoughts were spiraling. Out of everyone here, this is what I get. Was this a joke? Did I do something wrong? Around me, the conversation resumed, but now it included me. "Hey, at least it's practical," someone joked. "You can finally stop losing your keys," another added. More laughter. I smiled again, nodded, played along. But embarrassment settled deep in my chest. I watched others unwrap their gifts later that evening. Branded bags, envelopes slipped discreetly into pockets. New gadgets, compliments exchanged, gratitude praised loudly. And there I was, slipping a $2 keychain into my pocket like it was something I needed to hide. At some point, my relative caught my eye. They were still smiling, calm, almost amused. That bothered me more than the gift itself. Because they didn't look embarrassed. They didn't look apologetic. They looked confident. Like they knew something no one else did. Later that night, when the food was gone and the conversations had turned louder and more careless, someone brought it up again. "So," they said, nudging me, "you gonna treasure that keychain or frame it?" Everyone laughed. This time, I joined in more easily. "Hey," I said, raising my hands. "At least it's useful, I guess." The words came out casual, but something about them felt wrong the moment I said them. I remember tossing the keychain onto the table, letting it slide among empty glasses and plates, like it didn't matter. Like it didn't matter. I didn't notice how my relative looked at that moment. I didn't notice the way their smile faded, just slightly. If I had, maybe things would have been different. But I didn't. That night when I got home, I emptied my pockets. Wallet, phone, loose change. And the keychain. I held it for a second, under the dim light of my room. Cheap, light, ordinary. I placed it on my desk and turned away. Already forgotten. Already dismissed. What I didn't know, what none of us knew, was that this exact moment, this laugh, this careless joke, was the beginning of a truth that would shock everyone in that room. And it would all start with that keychain. After that night, life went back to normal, or at least what passed for normal in my world. The family gathering became just another memory, filed away with dozens of others. The laughter, the noise, the embarrassment, all of it slowly faded, or so I thought. The keychain, though, didn't disappear. It sat on my desk for days. At first, I barely noticed it. It blended in with the clutter, old receipts, tangled charging cables, unopened mail. Just another small object taking up space. Every time I reached for my phone or keys, my eyes passed over it without stopping. And when I did notice it, I felt a faint sting of irritation. Not because of what it was, but because of what it represented. I told myself it was silly to care. A gift is a gift, right? No one owes you anything. That's what mature adults say. That's what I repeated in my head whenever the memory of that laughter crept back in. Still, something about it bothered me. Maybe it was pride. Or maybe it was something deeper. A feeling I'd carried for years, but never fully confronted. I had always felt slightly out of place in my family. Not rejected, not unloved, just overlooked. Growing up, I learned early that attention was earned. Grades, achievements, promotions, big announcements. Those were the things that got praise, applause, and generosity. I wasn't bad at life, but I was exceptional either. I didn't have dramatic success stories or failures. I existed in the middle, quiet, reliable, easy to forget. So when I looked at that keychain, it felt like confirmation of something I already believed about myself. This is what they think I'm worth. I know that sounds harsh, maybe even unfair. But emotions aren't logical. They pile up slowly, quietly, until something small, something insignificant becomes the final proof. That $2 keychain wasn't just cheap. It felt symbolic. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was being dramatic, that I was projecting, that my relative probably grabbed it last minute and didn't think much of it. But then another thought followed. They had thought about it. They chose it. They wrapped it. They handed it to me in front of everyone. And somehow, that made it worse. A few days later, I cleaned my room. Not because I wanted to, but because clutter had started stressing me out. I needed control over something, even if it was just my space. I tossed old papers into the trash, sorted through junk drawers, put things where they belonged. That's when I picked up the keychain again. It felt even lighter than I remembered. I turned it over in my hand, letting it dangle between my fingers. "This is pointless," I muttered under my breath. For a moment, just a moment, I stood over the trash can. The lid was already open. I thought about dropping it in. No one would know, no one would care. It would disappear quietly, the same way it entered my life. I hesitated, not because I thought it might be valuable, but because throwing it away felt final. Like admitting something to myself that I wasn't ready to say out loud. So instead, I shoved it into a drawer. Out of sight, out of mind. Or so I hoped. Days passed. Then a week. Every now and then, the memory resurfaced, usually at inconvenient times, while driving, while lying awake at night, while watching other people receive praise or recognition. I replayed the laughter in my head. The whisper, "That's it." I replayed my own voice. At least it's useful, I guess. Each time, the words felt heavier. I began avoiding that relative. Not intentionally, not in any obvious way, but I found excuses not to text back right away. I kept conversations short, polite, surface level. Part of me didn't want to risk another awkward moment. Another part of me was afraid of what I might say if I spoke honestly. Because honesty can be messy. One evening, while searching for a pen, I opened the drawer again. The keychain was still there. For reasons I couldn't explain, I picked it up. This time, I didn't immediately put it down. I studied it more carefully, not out of curiosity, but boredom. That's when I noticed something strange. It wasn't scratched the way I'd assumed. The lines were too precise, too deliberate. I leaned closer. There were markings. Tiny, faint, almost invisible unless the light hit it just right. I frowned. "What is this?" I whispered. My heart beat a little faster, not with excitement but confusion. I told myself it was probably nothing. A manufacturer's mark, a serial number, something meaningless. Still, a sense of unease crept in. I placed it back in the drawer. And then my phone rang. It was my relative. For a second, I considered letting it go to voicemail. I didn't. "Hey," I said. "Hey," they replied. Their voice sounded calm, too calm. They didn't ask how I was, didn't make small talk. They went straight to the point. "Do you still have the keychain?" The question caught me off guard. I laughed nervously. Yeah, why?" There was a pause on the other end. Not a bad connection. A deliberate silence. "Good," they finally said. "Don't lose it." Something in their tone made my stomach tight. Before I could ask anything else, they added, "And don't underestimate it." Then they hung up. I stared at my phone. My heart was racing now. Not because I knew anything, but because suddenly, I felt like I had missed something important. That cheap, meaningless keychain no longer felt meaningless at all. And for the first time since that night, I wondered if the joke had never been on me. It had been on everyone else, including myself. I didn't sleep that night. I tried to. I turned off the lights, put my phone face down, and told myself it was nothing. Just a weird phone call, just my imagination running wild. But the silence in my room felt heavier than usual. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind replayed my relative's voice. "Do you still have the keychain? Don't lose it. Don't underestimate it." Those words didn't sound casual. They sounded intentional. I got up and turned on the lamp. The light flickered on, casting a dull glow across my desk. I opened the drawer again and took out the keychain. It felt different now. Not physically, it was still light, still simple, but emotionally. Like an object that suddenly carried weight because someone told you it mattered. I rolled it between my fingers, letting the metal catch the light. That's when I saw it again. The markings. I hadn't imagined them. Tiny letters etched so finely they blended into the surface, unless you tilted it just right. I held it closer to my face, squinting, angling it under the lamp. There was a name. Not my name. And below it, a series of numbers. My heart started pounding. I didn't know why. It wasn't excitement. It was uncertainty, the kind that creeps in when you realize there's more going on than you were told. I grabbed my phone and searched the numbers. Nothing. I tried different combinations. Nothing again. I laughed quietly to myself, shaking my head. "You're overthinking this," I told myself. "It's just a keychain." Still, I couldn't put it down. The next morning, I brought it with me to work. Not attached to my keys. Just in my pocket. Like I needed to keep it close. Throughout the day, my focus drifted. Emails blurred together. Conversations felt distant. Every spare moment, my hand slipped into my pocket to check if it was still there. I caught myself doing it and frowned. "What's wrong with you?" During lunch, I considered calling my relative back. I didn't. Something told me they wouldn't say much, not yet. That evening, as I was about to head home, my phone buzzed. A message from my relative. "Tomorrow, come see me. Bring the keychain." No explanation. No emojis. No punctuation beyond the period. Just 4 words that sent a chill through me. I typed back, "Why?" The dots appeared, then disappeared, then nothing. They didn't respond. I barely slept again. The next day felt unreal, like I was moving through it on autopilot. I kept replaying possibilities in my head. Was it sentimental? Was it some kind of joke? Was I about to be embarrassed again? When I arrived at their place, the house looked exactly the same as always. Quiet, ordinary, nothing about it hinted at secrets or surprises. They opened the door before I knocked. "You came," they said, smiling. "Of course," I replied. "You sounded serious." They stepped aside, letting me in. The living room was neat, almost too neat. Everything had a place, nothing extra, no clutter. "Sit," they said, gesturing to the couch. I did. They disappeared into another room. I waited. Minutes passed. I could hear drawers opening, papers rustling. My heart hammered in my chest. Finally, they returned holding a folder. They placed it on the table between us. "Before I explain anything," they said, looking directly at me, "I need to ask you something." I swallowed. "Okay. When I gave you the keychain, what did you think?" I hesitated. I could lie. I didn't. "I thought it was cheap," I admitted quietly. "I didn't understand it." They nodded slowly. No anger, no disappointment. "Did you consider throwing it away?" My stomach dropped. "Yes," I said. "I almost did." Another nod. "And you didn't?" "No." They leaned back, studying me. "That's why you're here," they said. I frowned. "What do you mean?" They reached into their pocket and pulled out an identical keychain. My breath caught. Same shape, same metal, same markings. They placed it beside mine. "Do you see the numbers?" they asked. "Yes." "They're not random." They opened the folder. Inside were documents. Official looking, stamped, signed. My eyes skimmed the pages. Addresses, dates, legal language I barely understood. Then I saw a familiar sequence of numbers. The same ones engraved on my keychain. "What is this?" I whispered. They took a deep breath. "It's a reference key," they said. "A symbolic one." "For what?" "For something I bought years ago." My chest tightened. "For you." The room felt suddenly too small. I stared at the papers, then back at them. "You're joking," I said weakly. They shook their head. "I wanted to see who you were before you knew," they said calmly. "Before money changed anything." I felt dizzy. My mind raced with questions, but no words came out. They continued. "People behave differently when they know the value of something. Gratitude becomes performance. Humility disappears. I didn't want that." "So you gave me a test?" I asked. "A choice," they corrected. I thought of the laughter, the jokes, my own mocking words. Shame washed over me. "I failed," I said quietly. They shook their head again. "No," they said, "you didn't." I looked up. "You didn't throw it away," they continued. "You didn't lose it, and when I asked about it, you listened." They paused. "That matters." I sat back, overwhelmed. The keychain lay between us, no longer small, no longer cheap. It felt like a ticking clock. They closed the folder. "We'll talk about the rest soon," they said. "Not today." I blinked. That's it. For now. I stood up slowly, my legs shaky. As I left, they said one last thing. "Remember this," they said. "What looks insignificant often carries the biggest consequences." Outside, the air felt colder. The world looked the same, cars passing, people walking, life continuing. But nothing felt the same anymore. That strange message hadn't just changed everything. It had revealed how close I'd come to losing it all, without even knowing it existed. I sat there staring at the folder, my hands resting on my knees, my mind struggling to catch up with what my eyes were seeing. The room felt unnaturally quiet. No background noise, no ticking clock, just the soft rustle of paper as my relative adjusted the documents on the table between us. "This doesn't make sense," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why me?" They didn't answer right away. Instead, they closed the folder carefully, as if sealing something fragile inside it. Then they leaned back in their chair and looked at me, not the way relatives usually do, with expectation or judgment, but like someone studying a long, unfinished story. "I've watched you for a long time," they said. That sentence alone made my chest tight. "Not in a creepy way," they added with a faint smile, sensing my discomfort. "In a quiet way, from a distance." I nodded, unsure what to say. "You've always been the one people overlook," they continued. "Not because you're invisible, but because you don't demand attention." The words hit closer than I expected. They went on. "You show up. You do what's asked of you. You don't complain. And when you're treated unfairly, you swallow it and move on." I felt exposed. I'd never said those things out loud, but hearing someone else say them made my throat tight. "That's rare," they said, "and it's valuable." I glanced down at the keychain, still resting on the table. "So this," I said slowly, "this was all planned." "Yes," they replied, "years ago." Years. The word echoed in my head. They opened the folder again, this time pulling out a single document and sliding it toward me. "Read the date," they said. I did. It was from years before the family gathering, before that laugh, before the joke I'd made, before I'd ever held that keychain. My hands trembled slightly. "I didn't want to give you money," they said. "Money disappears, it changes people, it creates noise." "So you gave me a keychain?" I asked, half in disbelief. They smiled softly. "I gave you responsibility." They explained then. Not all at once, not dramatically, piece by piece. They had purchased a property years ago, not as an investment flip, not as a display of wealth, but as a safety net, something solid, something stable. And they had put it in my name. Quietly, legally. The keychain was never meant to unlock a door. It was meant to unlock understanding. That keychain, they said, tapping it lightly, was a reference, a symbol, a reminder. The numbers link to records you now have access to. My chest felt tight, my breathing shallow. "You handed it to me in front of everyone," I said. "Why?" They didn't hesitate. "Because life rarely hands you value quietly," they said. "It tests you publicly." I remembered the laughter, the whispers, my own voice saying, "At least it's useful, I guess." Shame crawled up my spine. "I didn't want to embarrass you," they said gently. "I wanted to see how you handled it." I swallowed hard. "What if I'd thrown it away?" I asked. They met my eyes. "Then nothing would have changed," they said simply. "The property would still exist. Life would go on, you just wouldn't be part of it." That scared me more than anything else they'd said. No punishment. No confrontation. Just absence. I realized then how close I'd come to erasing something meaningful, not out of malice, but out of pride. "When you laughed with them," they continued, "I knew you were hurt, but you didn't lash out. You didn't humiliate anyone in return." "I mocked it," I said quietly. "You mocked the object," they replied, "not the intention." There was a difference, and they had seen it. The conversation shifted then, from shock to weight. "What happens now?" I asked. They leaned forward. "Now," they said, "you decide who you want to be knowing what you know." They didn't slide the folder closer. They didn't tell me to sign anything. They didn't celebrate. They waited. That silence was heavier than any reveal. I thought about my family. How quickly they judged. How easily value was measured by price tags and brand names. I imagined their faces when they found out. The laughter turning into silence. The jokes dissolving into regret. But something stopped me from feeling satisfaction. Because the truth wasn't meant to embarrass them. It was meant to humble me. "I don't deserve this," I said finally. My relative smiled, not triumphantly, not smugly, but with quiet certainty. "No one ever feels ready for responsibility," they said. "That's why it's given, not earned." They stood up and gathered the papers. "I'll give you time," they said. "Process it, sit with it." As I left, I looked back once more at the keychain. That same cheap-looking piece of metal. Same scratches. Same weight. But now it carried something else. Perspective. I walked out into the street. The sounds of traffic suddenly loud again, reality rushing back in. I didn't feel rich. I didn't feel lucky. I felt small and strangely grateful. Because the truth behind that $2 gift wasn't about money at all. It was about trust. And once you realize someone trusted you when you didn't even trust yourself, that changes everything. The truth didn't hit me all at once. It settled slowly, like weight pressing down on my chest over time. In the days after that conversation, I moved through life differently. Not because anything around me had changed, but because I had. Every sound felt louder. Every interaction felt heavier. It was as if my mind kept replaying the same moments over and over, forcing me to watch myself from the outside. The laughter. The whispers. My own careless words. At least it's useful, I guess. I cringed every time the sentence echoed in my head. I realized then that shame doesn't come from being wrong. It comes from knowing you could have been better. I avoided my family for a while. Not out of anger, not even out of fear, but because I didn't know how to face them knowing what I knew. Every time my phone buzzed with a family group message, my stomach tightened. Memes, jokes, casual conversations. None of them knew what that keychain truly represented. None of them knew how close I'd come to throwing it away, or worse, throwing away the trust behind it. And somehow, that secret felt heavier than if everyone knew. When I finally did see them again, it was at another casual gathering. Nothing special, again. Same living room, same chairs, same forced laughter. But I wasn't the same person sitting on that couch anymore. I watched them closely this time, the way gifts were compared, the way comments were made casually without thought, the way value was measured instantly, by size, by shine, by price. And I saw myself in them. That's what hurt the most. At one point, someone joked about that old night. "Hey," they said, laughing, "remember that keychain thing?" A few people chuckled. I felt the room tilt slightly. My relative was there too. Quiet, observing. I looked at the person who made the joke. Then I surprised myself. "It wasn't funny," I said calmly. The laughter stopped. "I laughed that night," I continued, my voice steady but firm. "But I shouldn't have." Silence filled the room. I didn't explain. I didn't reveal anything. I didn't need to. That moment wasn't about them understanding the gift. It was about me owning my mistake. Later, my relative pulled me aside. "You didn't have to do that," they said. "I know," I replied, "but I wanted to." They nodded, approving, but didn't say more. And that meant more than praise ever could. That night, when I got home, I sat alone and took out the keychain. I placed it on the table in front of me. Same object. Different meaning. I thought about how easily I'd judged it, how quickly I'd attached my own insecurity to something innocent. How often we do that, projecting our wounds onto the people who least deserve it. I realized something uncomfortable. The gift hadn't embarrassed me. My ego had. I'd been so focused on how others saw me that I forgot how I wanted to see myself. Grateful, grounded, respectful. The shame wasn't crushing anymore. It was instructive. It taught me something no amount of money ever could. That night, I wrote a message to my relative. Not long, not dramatic. Just honest. "I'm sorry for how I reacted. Thank you for trusting me, even when I didn't deserve it yet." They replied hours later. "You deserve the chance. That's all that matters. I didn't cry, but I sat there for a long time after reading it. Because trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild, but trust freely given is something you carry forever. Over time, I noticed changes in myself. I listened more. I reacted less. I stopped judging value so quickly, not just in gifts, but in people. I realized how many times I'd underestimated things, simply because they didn't announce themselves loudly. The quiet coworker, the simple idea, the unremarkable moment. Just like that keychain. And eventually, the shame faded, not because I forgot, but because I learned. The lesson stayed. That night from months ago no longer haunted me. It grounded me. Because sometimes, the most important lessons come disguised as embarrassment. And sometimes, the smallest gift reveals the biggest truth. Not about money, not about worth, but about who you are when no one's watching. And who you choose to be once you realize they were all watching after all. There's a strange moment that happens after everything changes. Not the moment of shock, not the moment of discovery, but the quiet moment after, when life looks the same, but you don't. That's where I found myself. Days passed, then weeks. The story didn't end with applause or celebration. No dramatic announcement. No big reveal to the world. Just me waking up every morning, going through the same routine, carrying a completely different awareness. That keychain stayed with me. Not on my keys at first. I wasn't ready for that. It sat on my desk, right where I could see it. A reminder. Not of money, not of property, but of how close I came to losing something priceless without even knowing it existed. Because here's the truth no one talks about. We don't usually lose important things dramatically. We lose them casually. With a joke. With an eye roll. With a careless laugh, meant to impress people who won't remember it tomorrow. I think back to that first night, the gathering, the noise, the laughter. The way I judged something in seconds. The way I let embarrassment speak louder than gratitude. And I wonder how many times I've done that in life. How many opportunities did I label as nothing because they didn't arrive wrapped the way I expected? How many people did I underestimate because they weren't loud about their value? How many moments did I dismiss because they didn't look impressive enough to matter? That's the part that stays with me. Not the money. Not the gift. The realization. Because the keychain didn't test my intelligence. It tested my character. And I almost failed. What scares me now isn't how close I came to throwing it away. It's how easy it would have been. One bad day. One deeper moment of insecurity. One extra joke from someone else. And it would have been gone. No confrontation. No warning. No dramatic consequence. Just gone. That's how life works sometimes. The biggest turning points don't announce themselves. They whisper. And if you're too busy laughing or comparing or proving something, you miss them. I think about my relative often now. Not about what they gave me, but why they gave it the way they did. They didn't want to impress me. They wanted to understand me. They wanted to see who I was when I thought no one important was watching. That's the kind of test we're all taking every day. How do you treat things when you think they don't matter? How do you react when there's nothing to gain? Who are you when the value isn't obvious yet? Those answers shape everything. Sometimes, I imagine an alternate version of this story. One where I threw the keychain away. One where I lost it. One where I never answered that phone call. In that version, life keeps moving. I never know what I missed. I never feel the weight of that lesson. I never grow in the way I needed to. And that version of me still judges too quickly, still confuses price with value, still mistakes loudness for importance. That version of me scares me, because that version exists in a lot of people, maybe even in you. We live in a world that teaches us to react fast. Swipe, judge, laugh, dismiss. But some things don't reveal themselves immediately. Some gifts take time. Some people take patience. Some moments take humility. That keychain didn't change my life because of what it was connected to. It changed my life because of what it revealed about me. It forced me to slow down, to look again, to question my assumptions. And now, every time I hold it, every time I feel its weight in my hand, I remember something important. Not everything valuable looks valuable at first. Not every blessing arrives loudly. And sometimes, the smallest thing you almost throw away is the thing that was meant to change you the most. So if there's one reason I'm telling this story, it's not to shock you. It's to warn you. The next time you're tempted to laugh something off. The next time you dismiss someone too quickly. The next time you judge worth by appearance alone. Pause. Because you never really know what you're holding. And you never really know who's watching. Until it's too late. Or if you're lucky, until it is.